Hello, welcome to the final Jubilee. Today we're going to get into a theological story of who Enoch was. Before we get into the book of Enoch and the connections between Greek mythology and Egyptian gods, I want to talk about some scripture here real quick. Proverbs 3:5. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding. That there is saying with your prayer, with your faith, you will understand that God is the one in control here. He is the one that has the message, and that message sometimes is not going to be what you think it is. Now we're going to get into a Gnostic quote from the Gospel of Thomas, the sayings of Jesus. And I'm going to say this one here because what we're going to get into a lot is a lot of Gnostic readings here later, along with Orthodoxy readings and understanding of different point of views of who Enoch was. Here is the Gospel of Thomas, the sayings of Jesus. Jesus said, "Whoever seeks shouldn't stop until they find. When they find, they'll be disturbed. When they are disturbed, they'll be amazed and reign over all." And if we take that back to Proverbs 3:5, and not lean on our own understanding, but trust in God. If we find things that are disturbing to us through prayer, through the word, and understanding of things that might not be of what we thought they were, they might be very, very disturbing. Our next thing is I want you to think about is 1 Theologians 5:18 through 22. Give thanks in all circumstances, for this is the will of God in Jesus Christ for you. Do not quench the thirst. Do not despise prophecies, but test everything. Hold fast what is good and abstain from every form of evil. Just because we have a lot of biblical literature out there does not mean that it's true. But also, we do have a lot of other extra biblical knowledge out there that is true. And just because it was not put in the Bible does not mean that we should not think of it highly. Because even the book of Jasher is spoke about and referenced from in Joshua 10:13, 2 Samuel 1:18, 2 Timothy 3:8. The book of Jasher is not a book inside of the Bible, but it is quoted in the Bible. And when the Bible quotes something, we ourselves are needing to know what is in the book that the Bible is talking about. And this is where we get people who will come with a big debate on telling you that, well, it's not in the Bible, so I don't need to know it, and I shouldn't have to read it because it's not in the Bible. Well, unfortunately, here is the disturbing thing. The Bible spoke of it, so you need to know it. The Bible also, in the New Testament, told you to test everything and not to lean on your own understanding. The book of Jasher was not added to the Bible, but it was written about inside of the Bible. It was quoted inside of the Bible. Ignoring that is ignoring the word of God. The word Jasher in Hebrew stands for upright. So it's the book of the upright, or the book of justice. The book of Jasher is also a historical book. It tells stories from Genesis to the Exodus. It is very complex and tells a little bit more of the story of Enoch that you do not get within the Bible. The Bible does not have the story of Enoch in it. It just says that he was taken by God because he was righteous. Genesis 5:24. Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. Hebrews 11:5. By faith Enoch was taken up so that he should not see death, and he was not found because God had taken him. Now before he was taken, he was commended as have pleased God. This is literally the information you can find about Enoch, other than that he is the seventh from Adam, and his father was Jared, and his son was Methuselah, and he was the great-grandfather of Noah. That doesn't really tell us much about his story inside of the Bible, but we hear that he was so holy that he was one of the only to be taken up to heaven without dying. To really understand the theological story behind Enoch, we need to get into Genesis 11:6-7. And the Lord said, behold, they are one people, and they have all one language. And this is only the beginning of what they will do. And nothing that they propose to do will now be impossible for them. Come, let us go down and confuse their language, so that they may not understand one another's speech. So what we just heard is God came down during the Tower of Babel when Nimrod and all his followers were trying to build a tower that would reach the heavens. So that way, when the flood comes, they would have an exit to get away from the flood. But God basically said, no, I'm going to take that away from you, and you guys are no longer going to speak the same language. So when we think about 1 Corinthians 14, it talks about speaking in tongues. I think that some people can really get a misunderstanding about when we're talking about speaking in tongues in 1 Corinthians 14. Now, we just went over that God talked with his angels that were going to come down to earth and make everyone speak different languages. No one's going to have one language anymore. It's going to be all confusing, and everyone's going to speak different languages. So all these different tribes now do not have the same language. Now let's look at 1 Corinthians 14:2-5. For one who speaks in a tongue speaks not to men, but to God. For no one understands him, but he utters mysteries in the Spirit. On the other hand, the one who prophesies speaks to people for their upbuilding and encouragement and consolation. The one who speaks in a tongue builds up himself, but the one who prophesies builds up the church. Now I want you all to speak in tongues, but even more to prophesy. The one who prophesies is greater than the one who speaks in tongues, unless someone interpretates, so that the church may be built up. When I hear this, I can picture a person who does not speak the same language as me, trying to speak to my family, my city, my state, my country, and they are speaking a language that I do not understand. And they could be prophesying about the word of God. They could be prophesying about the things to come, and I don't understand exactly what they're saying. But if they could have an interpreter reading to us, saying to us the things that they're saying in English, now I can understand what they're saying, and the prophecy could be great. Now, let's put this and keep this in mind, that language has now changed since the Tower of Babel. We do not all speak one language anymore. The same name could be changed multiple times in language. A story could be about someone that's the same story about in the Bible for, say, Enoch, or it could be Noah. And we can look back at ancient artifacts and see the linking stories that put together things that are maybe hard to understand because things of the story could just be slightly different. But that does not mean that the story is not the same. It doesn't mean that that's not the same person. We could look back at the stories of Enoch in the book of Jasher and the book of Jubilees. And we'll get into these two books. And we're going to talk about the findings of these books and the book of Enoch with the Dead Sea Scrolls. The literature of the book of Enoch that we have that's in fragments, and they found the book of the Watchers in its whole with the Dead Sea Scrolls dates to be about second generation BCE. That's around 500 to 250 BCE. But some really cool evidence that is not really talked about a whole lot, but you can find the stories on the internet and the web about it, and different scholars finding linking stories of Enoch through Mesopotamia and the Greek Hermes Trismegistus and Thoth in Greek mythology and the Egyptian stories on the hieroglyphics and papyri that they have. You can see the story of Enoch on the Egyptian temples and pyramids. These dates go way back, further than the fragments of the Dead Sea Scrolls. And before we get into the story of Enduranki, who is the seventh Sumerian king, we're going to get into the book of Jasher and Jubilees. And we'll start out with the book of Jubilees. All right, so we're going to get into the book of Jubilees. It starts out in the middle of chapter 4, verses 16 through 26. And in the 11th Jubilee, Jared took to himself a wife, and her name was Barikah, the daughter of Jashurel, a daughter of his father's brother, in the 4th week of this Jubilee. And she bore him a son in the 5th week, in the 4th year of the Jubilee. And he called his name Enoch. And he was the first among men that are born on earth who learned writing and knowledge and wisdom, and who wrote down the signs of the heavens according to the order of the months in a scroll, that men might know the seasons of the years according to the order of their separate months. And he was the first to write a testimony, and he testified to the sons of the men among the generations of the earth, and recounted the weeks of the Jubilees, and made known to them the days of the years, and set in order the months, and recounted the Sabbaths of the years as we had made known to him. And what was and what will be, he saw in a vision of his sleep, as if will happen to the children of men throughout their generations until the day of judgment. He saw and understood everything and wrote his testimony and understood everything and placed the testimony on earth for all the children of men and for their generations. And in the 12th Jubilee, in the 7th week thereof, he took to himself a wife, and her name was Eden, the daughter of Daniel, the daughter of his father's brother. And in the 6th year, in this week, she bore him a son, and he called his name Methuselah. And he testified to the watchers who had sinned with the daughters of men, for there had begotten to unite themselves with them, so as to be defiled with the daughters of men. And Enoch testified against them all. And he was taken among the children of men, and we conducted him into the Garden of Eden in majesty and honor. And behold, there he wrote down the condemnation and judgment of the world, and all the wickedness of the children of men. And on the account of it, God brought the waters of the flood of all the land of Eden. For there he was set as a sign, and that he should recount all the deeds of the generations until the day of the condemnation. And he burned the incense of the sanctuary, even sweet spices acceptable before the Lord on the mountain. For the Lord has foreplaced on the earth the Garden of Eden and the mountain of the east, and this mountain of which you are this day, Mount Sinai and Mount Zion, which will be sanctified in the new creation for the sanctification of the earth. Through the earth will be sanctified from all the guilt and its uncleanness through the generations of the world. When I read that, I don't hear anything like that about Enoch in the Bible. Not in Genesis, not in Hebrew, and definitely not in the genealogy lists that he is listed in that say that he lived to be 365 years. Very interesting that he lived to be 365, and we are going to point that out here in a bit on some other historical, theological things that we'll talk about with Egyptian gods. And so our next story we have to read out is the story in the book of Jasher that is actually talked about in the book of Enoch. They're pretty similar stories, but this story in the book of Jasher is going to tell you more about how he prophesied to the nations, to the kings and priests of the world. So the story of Enoch is chapter 3 in the book of Jasher, and we'll jump in there right at verse 1 because that's where the story starts. And Enoch lived 65 years, and he begot Methuselah. And Enoch walked with God after he have begotten Methuselah. And he served the Lord and despised the evil ways of men. And the soul of Enoch was wrapped up in the instruction of the Lord in knowledge and in the understanding. And he wisely retired from the sons of men and hid himself from them for many days. And in this was at the expiration of many years while he was serving the Lord and praying before him in his house, that a messenger of the Lord called to him from heaven, and he said, "Here I am." And he said, "Rise up, go out from your house and from the place where you hide yourself, and appear to the sons of men in order that you may teach them the way in which they should go, and the work which they must accomplish to enter into the ways of God. And Enoch rose up according to the word of the Lord and went out from his house, from this place, and from the chamber in which he was concealed. And he went to the sons of men and taught them the ways of the Lord. And at that time assembled the sons of men and acquainted them with the instruction of the Lord. And he ordered it to be proclaimed in all places where the sons of the men dwell, saying, where is the man who wishes to know the ways of the Lord and good works? Let them come to Enoch. And all the sons of men then assembled to him, for all who desired this thing went to Enoch. And Enoch reigned over the sons of men according to the word of the Lord. And they came and bowed to him, and they heard his word. And the Spirit of God was on Enoch, and he taught all his men the wisdom of God and his ways. And the sons of men served the Lord all the days of Enoch, and they came to hear his wisdom. And all the kings of the sons of men, both first and last, together with their princes and judges, came to Enoch when they heard of his wisdom, and they bowed down to him. And they also required of Enoch to reign over them, to which he consented. And they assembled 130 kings and princes in all, and they made Enoch king over them. And they were all under his power and command. And Enoch taught them wisdom, knowledge, and the ways of the Lord. And he made peace among them, and peace was throughout the earth during the life of Enoch. Reigned over the sons of men 233 years. He led them in the ways of the Lord. And these are the generations of Enoch: Methuselah, Elisha, and Elimelech, 3 sons, and their sisters were Michaela and Nemelia. And Methuselah lived 87 years, and he begot Lamech. And it was the 56th year of the life of Lamech when Adam died. 930 years old was he at his death. And his 2 sons with Enoch and his son Methuselah buried him with great pomps, as at the burial of kings, in the cave which God had told him. And in that place all the sons of men made a great mourning and weeping on account of Adam. It was therefore become a custom among the sons of men to this day. And Adam died because he ate of the tree of knowledge, and he and his children after him, as the Lord God had spoken. And it was in the year of Adam's death, which was the 243rd year of the reign of Enoch. In that time, Enoch resolved to separate himself from the sons of men and to hide himself as first in order to serve the Lord. And Enoch did so, but did not entirely hide himself from them, but kept away from the sons of men 3 days, and then went to them for 1 day. And during the 3 days that he was in his chambers, he prayed to and praised the Lord his God. And the day on which he went appeared to this subject, he taught them the ways of the Lord. And all they asked him about the Lord, he told them. And he did in the manner of many years. And after he concealed himself for 6 days, he appeared to his people 1 day in 7, and after that once in a month, and then once in a year, until all the kings, princes, and sons of men sought for him, and desired to see the face of Enoch again, and to hear his word. But they could not, as all the sons of men were greatly afraid of Enoch. They feared to approach him on the account of the godlike aura that was seated on his continuance. Therefore, no man could look at him, fearing he might punish and die. And all the kings and princes resolved to assemble the sons of men and to come to Enoch, thinking that they might all speak to him at the time when he should come out among them. And they did so. And the day came when Enoch went out, and they all assembled and came to him. And Enoch spoke to them the words of the Lord, and he taught them wisdom and knowledge. And they bowed down before him, and they said, "May the king live." And some time after, when the kings and princes and the sons of men were speaking to Enoch, and Enoch was teaching them the ways of God, behold, a messenger of the Lord then called to Enoch from heaven and wished to bring him up to heaven to make him reign there over the sons of God, as he had reigned over the sons of men on earth. When at that time Enoch heard this, he went and assembled all the inhabitations of the earth and taught them wisdom and knowledge and gave them divine instruction. And he said to them, I have been required to ascend into heaven. Therefore, I do not know the day of my going. And now, therefore, I will teach you wisdom and knowledge, and I will give you instructions before I leave you, how to act on earth. And he made peace among them, and he taught them continuance of life, and dwelt with them sometime, teaching them all these things. And at that time the sons of men were with Enoch, and Enoch was speaking to them, and they lifted up their eyes, and the likeness of the great horse descended from heaven, and the horse paced in the air. And they told Enoch what they have seen, and said to them, This horse descended on earth on my account. The time has come when I must go from you, and I will no longer be seen by you. And the horse descended at that time and stood before Enoch, and all the sons of men that were with Enoch saw him. And Enoch then again ordered a voice to be proclaimed, saying, Where is the man who delights to know the ways of the Lord his God? Let him come this day to Enoch before he is taken from us. And all the sons of men assembled and came to Enoch that day, and all the kings on the earth with their princes and their counselors remained with him that day. And Enoch then taught the sons of men wisdom and knowledge, and gave them divine instruction. And he commanded them to serve the Lord and walk in his ways all the days of their lives. And he continued to make peace among them. And it was after this that he rose up and rode on the horse, and he went out, and all the sons of men went after him, about 800,000 men. And they went with him one day's journey. And the second day he said to them, Return home to your tents. Why will you go? Perhaps you may die. And some of them went from him, and thus that remained went with him day's journey. And Enoch said to them every day, Return to your tents, lest you may die. But they were not willing to return. They went with him. And on the sixth day, some of the men remained and clung to him. And they said to him, We will go with you to the place where you go. As the Lord lives, only death will separate us. And they urged so much to go with him that they ceased speaking to them. And they went after him and would not return. And when the kings returned, they caused a consult to be taken in order to know that number of remaining men that went with Enoch. And it was on the seventh day that Enoch ascended into heaven in a whirlwind with horses and chariots of fire. And on the eighth day, all the kings that had been with Enoch sent to bring back the number of men that were with Enoch in that place from which he ascended into heaven. And all those kings went to the place, and they found the earth filled with snow there. And on the snow were large stones of snow. And one said to the other, "Come, let us break through the snow and see, perhaps the men that remained with Enoch are dead and are now under the stones of snow." And they searched, but they could not find him, for he has ascended into heaven. Look at these stories of Enoch in the book of Jubilees and the book of Jasher. We can see the consistency of he was a wise man who walked with God. Enoch served the Lord and had many children. Both stories have different points that fill in the blanks of each other. As Jasher teaches, he taught the sons of men, all the kings and princes of many nations, the word of the Lord. In the book of Jubilees, says Enoch was the first to write a book, and this book was full of knowledge from God and the heavens. The book of Enoch, as to what the book of Jubilees is referring to, has descriptions of the weeks and months of the calendar that was also found among the Dead Sea Scrolls. Part of this calendar has the apocalypse of Enoch's weeks of prophecy that has a very in-depth connection of human history and events within the Bible. If we refer to this calendar a jubilee of time as a 49 years, and on the 50th year, the jubilee year, we have a forgiveness of sins and debt is all let go of. All slaves are freed from slavery, and a new beginning is upon us to start over. Looking at this calendar, a week is referred to as a 7-year span of time. One of the best descriptions of this calendar is Josh Perks' video, The Apocalypse of Enoch's Weeks of Prophecy. Josh Perks has put a lot of time into this calendar and Enoch's prophecy that is written. If we look back at the story of Enoch in the book of Jubilees and the book of Jasher, it is also talks about how Enoch took time away from the world to spend time with the Lord. In the book of Jubilees, it describes the events in short words of what happens in the book of Enoch on being led to the Garden of Eden, Mount Sinai, and Mount Zion. In the book of Enoch, God sends archangels to take him on this journey to see all of these locations. What I have found fascinating is Enoch connects many religions together like Jesus does. I would definitely have to say that Enoch does not replace Jesus, as Enoch prophesies about him. But to connect these stories within other religions is Enochian literature of fallen ones and the darkness that is talked about within all of the world's religions. Some of these religions will mention Enoch and others don't at all. But the story that follows is linked to this story, and the oldest story is the Enduranki in Mesopotamia. Many authors out there talk about Mesopotamia and the connection between Enduranki and Enoch. Dr. Michael S. Heiser is a well-known author who writes about Enoch and the connections to the Bible and the Mesopotamia. Making this connection is a big thing for us to use in the story of Enoch. Enoch is just the given name we give this divine prophet of God in English that was made into a leader who walked with God. Enduranki of Zimber was a Sumerian king. His name appears in the Sumerian king list as being the 7th king of Surma. This ancient legendary Sumerian Kings name translates to the hero who binds heaven and earth, meaning connect Enki with Enoch, as Enoch is the seventh generation from Adam, who was mentioned earlier in the book of Jubilees and the book of Jasher as a righteous man who walked with God. In the book of Jasher, he was a king of kings who had wisdom and preached the word of God. In Jubilees, he was the first to scribe down the Lord's word, and many others facts of the heavenly luminaries, the word and the universe. In the book of Genesis 5:24, Enoch walked with God, and then he was no more because God took him. This story of Enki was unearthed in Nineveh in the city of Assyrian, located on the Tigris River. In this story are found the gods revealed to Enki the mystery of the secrets, presenting to him the great gifts like the tablet of the gods, a liver, and a cedar rod. These are all associated with having the ability to give oracles and divine omens. The liver is the seat of the soul in Mesopotamia. The gods pass on to Enki divine knowledge, but a method to also understand the future. This brings us to the book of Enoch in the Apocalypse of Weeks, chapter 91 through 93. This section of the book of Enoch foretells the future of from when Enoch's time to now. Enoch prophesies about the flood, Abraham, Moses, the birth of Jesus Christ, the Antichrist, the second coming, and also many other things within this book. As we look at Enki, he shares his knowledge with the men of Nippur, Shapur, and Babylon, and passes the secrets on to his son. In the book of Enoch, Enoch passes on the secrets to his son Methuselah. Enoch 91:1. Now, my son Methuselah, call all of your brothers and all of your mother's children to me, for the word calls me, and the Spirit pours upon me, that I will tell you everything that will happen to you in the future. We can also point back to the book of Jasher. After Enoch ascends to heaven, the kings of the world anoint Methuselah to rule over them as the King of Kings and the priest of All High. He was also given the garments God made Adam by Enoch before he was taken by God. The story of Enki has a lot in common with Enoch and seems to be the same story. Enki, who scribes the secrets of the gods and connects the celestial and telestial realms, he had access to the tablets of the gods that open both the spiritual and physical realms. And we just talked about this with the book of Jubilees. Enoch, Hermes, Trismegistus, and Thoth. The Islamic scholars believe that Enoch, Idris, was Hermes Trismegistus, a Greek god. The Kabbalah and Hermetica are other mystical-like religions that aren't fully known as a religion based on their own. Kabbalah is a Jewish mysticism that focuses on hidden things within the Torah and the nature of God through the view of concepts and the tree of life. Hermetica views go into theological systems that incorporate the universe divine wisdom, that incorporates elements of religions. To understand the views of the connection of Enoch and the Zohar, talks about Enoch and Metatron, who are viewed as divine scribes. To find out more, we must get to know Hermes, the Greek god, Hermes Trismegistus, and Thoth, the Egyptian god of wisdom and writing. Many Gnostic and paganism religions came from Hermetica. The Gnostic gospel has been of the same views with the cosmos and the views of God and rulers. Christianity also follows pagan-like ways, but is an Aramaic religion. Early Christianity had aspects of paganism. Greek mythology, Hermes, the Greek god Hermes, whom the Romans knew as Mercury, was a messenger god that meditated between heaven and earth. Hermes delivered communications from the gods to mankind and had a wide range of powers. Hermes was a shepherd of influence that was worshipped throughout Greece and had a nexus with Arcadia. This Greek god of shepherds and herdsmen protected the flocks, also the travelers, the merchants, the hurdlers, and the thieves of all else. Hermes, the psychopomus, the director of souls, who guides the souls of the dead to the underworld. Hermes was known to draw the boundary lines of cities, private property, and the entry door of a house. Hermes was quite the inventor as well, as he invented fire and the lyra. Hermetic hymns were created in his honor. If we compare Enoch to this short description of Hermes, we can see some connections between the two. Enoch influenced many nations and their leaders to hear the word of God, as said in the book of Jasher. He left mankind to be with God and to meditate with him alone. Then he would return to speak wisdom to all while he shared the Lord's words. The book of Jasher in 3:20 speaks of this event. Jasher 3:20. And he did in this manner of many years. And after he concealed himself for 6 days and appeared to his people 1 day in 7, and after that once in a month, and then once in a year, until all the kings, princes, and sons of men sought for him and desired to see the face of Enoch again and to hear his word, but they could not, as all the sons of men were greatly afraid of Enoch, and they feared to approach him on the account of his godlike awera that was seated on him continuance. Therefore, no man could look at him, fearing he might be punished and die. It also says at the end of Jasher 3:20 that Enoch had a godlike awera, and no man could look at him, as they feared him. Hermes was considered to be a Greek god, and they worshipped him, and Enoch was looked at to have a godlike awera. Earlier in the book of Jasher, it says that all the kings and princes bowed down to Enoch. Jasher 3:6-10 describes this moment when all the nations at the time bowed down to him. Jasher 3:6-10. And he ordered it to be proclaimed in all places where the sons of men dwelt, saying, Where is the man who wishes to know the ways of the Lord and good works? Let him come to Enoch. And all the sons of men then assembled to him. For all who desired this thing went to Enoch. And Enoch reigned over the sons of men according to the word of the Lord. And they came and bowed to him, and they heard his word. And the Spirit of God was on Enoch, and he taught all his men the wisdom of God and his ways. And the sons of men served the Lord all the days of Enoch. And they came to hear his wisdom. And all the kings of the sons of men, both first and last, together with their princes and judges, came to Enoch when they heard of his wisdom, and they bowed down to him, and they also required of Enoch to reign over them, to which he considered, and they assembled 130 kings and princes in all, and they made Enoch king over them, and they were all under his power and command. This also shows that Enoch drew more than boundary lines of cities. It was more like nations from the description of Jasher. There were 130 kings and princes that bowed down to him, and they made him their ruler. as it describes that they all worship Hermes. They all worshipped Enoch as the king of all, as it says in the book of Jasher. He was the Melchizedek from the description of the book of Jasher. He was the king and priest of the Most High. The Elohim is the meaning of the Most High God. Hermes was the director of souls who guides the souls to the underworld. In the book of Jasher 3:23 through 24 speaks of how Enoch will be taken to heaven so that he may reign here over the sons of God. Jasher 3:23 through 24. And sometime after, when the kings and princes and the sons of men were speaking to Enoch, and Enoch was teaching them the ways of God, behold, a messenger of the Lord then called to Enoch from heaven, and wished to bring him up to heaven, to make him reign there over the sons of God, as he had reigned over the sons of men on earth. When at that time, when Enoch heard this, he went and assembled all the inhabitants of the earth, and taught them wisdom and knowledge, and gave them divine instruction. And he said to them, I have been required to ascend to heaven, therefore I do not know the day I'm going. In the book of Enoch, chapters 17 through 36, it talks about a journey that Enoch takes, showing him the tree of life and the tree of knowledge. In the last 4 chapters of that section, chapters 33 through 36, he speaks of going into heaven through portals with Archangel Uriel, who is guiding him through them. Uriel wrote down all the things he needed to know about the stars, their names, courses, and positions. He also wrote down their laws and operations. In chapters 35, it talks about 3 different portals in the west, as he saw 3 other portals in the east at the ends of the earth. Enoch 35. From there, I went towards the west to the ends of the earth, and saw 3 open portals as I had seen in the east, the same number of portals and the same number of outlets. Chapter 36 of Enoch speaks of how 3 more portals enter heaven in the south. If we look at the part of Hermes meditating between the heavens and the earth, we can see a connection of Enoch's story of the portals, where Enoch looks through different portals in multiple locations on the earth to see into heaven. Hermes was the communicator for the humans from the heavens. In Enoch 41, 1 through 2, he talks about the actions of men and the secrets of the heavens. Enoch 41, 1 through 2. After that, I saw all the secrets of the heavens, and how the kingdom is divided, and how the actions of men were weighed in the balance. And there I saw the mansions of the elect and the holy. And my eyes saw how all the sinners being driven away from there, those who deny the name of the Lord of spirits, are dragged off, where there is no rest because of the punishment which proceeds from the Lord of spirits. Enoch communicated to the men of the world of the ways of the Lord. He had a following of many, just like Hermes. Enoch saw what happened to the sinners who got punished. Enoch also interceded for the falling sons of God in chapter 14 and 15. Enoch 14, 4 through 7 is a judgment to the watchers who committed a great sin. Enoch 14, 4 through 7. I wrote out your petition, but in my vision I saw that your petition will not be granted unto you throughout all the days of eternity. Your judgment is final. The decree is, from this point on, you will be bound on earth through all the days of the world. You will not be able to re-enter heaven, but before you are bound, you will see all your loved ones destroyed. You will not be able to possess them. You will only be able to watch them fall by the sword. Your petition on their behalf or for yourselves will not be granted, even through your weep and prayer. This I have written. If we relate this to Hermes, the Greek god, he led the souls to the underworld. Enoch gave the falling sons of God their judgment from God, and they got their punishment. Enoch 15:1-3 is God speaking to Enoch, who the falling sons of God sent to speak for them. This story is extended in the book of Giants. Enoch 15:1-3. He said, "Fear not, Enoch, righteous man, and scribe of righteousness. Go say to the watchers of heaven, who have sent you to intercede for them. You should intercede for men, and not men for you. Why have you left the eternal heaven, and lying with women, and defiled yourselves with the daughters of men by taking them as wives, like the children of earth do, and begotten giants as your sons?" As it brings up giants, in Greek mythology, there are many giant creatures like Cerberus and the Argus. Genesis 6:1-4 speaks of this event where the falling sons of God sleep with the daughters of men, creating giants known as the Nephilim. Genesis 6:1-4. When man began to multiply on the face of the land and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of men were attractive, and they took as their wives any they chose. Then the Lord said, "My spirit shall not abide in man forever, for he is flesh. His days shall be 120 years. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. These were the mighty men who were of old, and men of renown." We learned that earlier in the book of Jubilees. It also recounts this same story in Jubilees 4:21. Jubilees 4:21, and he testified to the watchers who had sinned with the daughters of men, for these had begotten to unite themselves with them, so as to be defiled with the daughters of men, and Enoch testified against them all. The Greek god Hermes had a lot of connection to Enoch, and so we could write more of this connection, but we need to move on to Hermes Trismegistus. His writing of books and the emerald tablets of Thoth. One thing to look at is the Greek called Hermes, Mercury, and it is the planet next to the sun. Hermes Trismegistus wrote many books. Some stretch the story that it was in the thousands, and that he had a divine connection with God in the heavens. Hermes Trismegistus was known as the Nounce or the Pomenris, a herdsman of shepherds preaching about the cosmos, human nature, the soul, and the spiritual awakening. Hermes Trismegistus is a name that combines the Greek god Hermes and the Egyptian god Thoth. Hermes Trismegistus means Hermes the thrice greatest. It is said that he was known to invent writing, music, art, astrology, medicine, magic, alchemy, and civilization. Hermes Trismegistus' book, Corpus Hermeticum, also known as the Divine Pydrum of the Lost Wisdom of Pharaohs, and the Emerald Tablets, was said to be written in 100 to 300 BCE. The original Emerald Tablets were never found, but we have an Arabic source as early as the 8th and 9th century. It was translated into Latin several times in the late 12th and 13th century. Thoth's story is told on many Egyptian hieroglyphics as to be the Egyptian moon god. He was known of inventing the 365-day-year calendar, Thoth soon became known as the god of wisdom and magic. Thoth then also was credited to the inventor of writing and also the scribe of the underworld. Thoth was matched with the Greeks, with their god Hermes. Then, this is when the combined Thoth and Hermes created Hermes Trismegistus. In the book Pymander by Hermes Trismegistus talks about God being all things and knowing all things. He also mentions many things like Enoch, including the sons of God and repentance. Then said Pymander unto me, Dost thou understand this viso, and what it meaneth? I shall know, said I. Then said he, I am the light, the mind, thy God, who am before the Misto Neutro, that appeared out of darkness, and that bright and lightful word from the mind is the Son of God. This first book, called Pydrum by Hermes Trismegistus, in a short story of Hermes talking to his son, Hermes has his son write down what he is telling him. Oh, my son, write this first book, both for humanity's sake and for pity towards God. Hermes then starts to speak about religion and this truth, knowledge, philosophy of it. If we look back of the Pymander book of Hermes Trismegistus, we can see a section that we can relate to the Watchers as demons, where the children of the fallen sons of God, and Enoch 15 talks about the souls being trapped. And let's compare the Pydrum book of Hermes Trismegistus and Enoch 15. The Pydrum book, but to the foolish and evil and wicked and envious and covetous and murderous and profound, I am far off giving place to the revenging demon, which, applying unto him the sharpness of fire, torments such a man sensible, and armeth him the more of all the wickedness, that he may obtain the greater punishment. Enoch 15, 8 through 12. My judgment for the giants is that, since they are born from flesh, they will be called evil spirits and will remain on the earth, because they were created from above, from the holy watchers. At death, their spirits will come forth from their bodies and dwell on the earth. They will be called evil spirits. The heavenly spirits will dwell in heaven, but the terrestrial spirits who were born on earth will dwell on earth. The evil spirits of the giants will be like clouds. They will afflict, corrupt, attempt, battle, work destruction on the earth, and do evil. They will not eat nor drink, but be invisible. They will rise up against the children of men and against the women, because they have proceeded from them. The Hermes Trismegistus book, Pydrum, says these demons are going to get a greater punishment. And in the book of Enoch 15, 8 through 12, it talks about this punishment. So let's move on. This book is a vision of Hermes speaking to God and thanking him. And here's a line of it. But I, giving thanks and blessing the Father of all things, rose up, being able by him and taught the nature of the whole, and having seen the greatest sign, or sepulchre. Enoch, as Metatron, who are both regarded as divine scribes, is also associated with Thoth, the Egyptian god of wisdom and writing, and the Greek god Hermes, messenger of the gods, who together became the Hermetic figure Hermes Trismegistus, Hermes the thrice greatest. When we look at the book of Jubilees and we compare it of what we've learned that Enoch was the first to create writing and a calendar, and we go back to Hermes Trismegistus and Thoth, we can see a very good comparison because Thoth was the inventor of writing and the 365-day calendar, which is the number of years Enoch lived to be 365. It's very interesting that these connect. And I want to talk about how Thoth was an inventor of writing. Hermes Trismegistus was the inventor of writing. And we have all these different writings on hieroglyphics that compare to even the book of Revelations. And Revelations is a book that is ancient Old Testament writings. It does not fit the New Testament writings. In fact, they don't even know if John actually wrote the book, but they credit it to John. Now, we look at the comparison of the book of Revelations and we look at Egyptian writings, let's just say like the Book of the Gates and the Book of the Dead, and the hieroglyphics on the temples and pyramids, and you can find different lines from the Book of Revelations inside of these different Egyptian writings. So is Thoth the actual writer that John wrote from? And if you look at the book of Enoch and you put Enoch right next to the book of Revelations and we compare different storylines from the book of Revelations to the book of Enoch, and we can see that these two kind of fit together hand in hand. When you compare the book of the Watchers to, let's say, the story where the angel comes down from heaven with a key and a chain and a lock, and he's going to take the dragon, the serpent who is the devil, who is Satan, and he's going to lock him up for 1,000 years. These stories so similar. And you can see that Azazel, this falling son of God, who is spoke about in the Watchers, and basically all the way through this book of Enoch, you will find out more about Azazel. He is the whole reason why we get atonement in Leviticus 16. And the Dead Sea Scrolls, it actually says the name Azazel in Leviticus. And it does not say a scapegoat like it does in the King James Version or Latin translated versions of the Bible. So this is a very interesting topic to look at. And we can look back at going into the Egyptian writings of the Book of the Dead, and we can link that to another story of Enoch that we won't go quite into today because this is getting pretty lengthy, but we'll just bring it up a little bit right now. In the LDS Church, there is a book that Joseph Smith wrote. And we will get into this book a little bit more in a different topic in writing. But what we want to talk about today is it is the only book right now that has a story of Enoch with the Book of the Dead inside it. And if we get back to this connection, there's a revelation there and connection of how did Joseph Smith know anything to put that Book of the Dead with his Book of Enoch. This theological history of what we just talked about, even though the translation that of the papyrus has been found to be incorrect, it is quite interesting that the actual papyrus is with his story of Enoch. The Book of Abraham is where it's at. But if you look at the Book of Abraham that they have, it has quite correlations with the revelation of Abraham. It's another apocryphal writing that was found. And it's quite interesting that this writing of the Egyptians was inside of his Book of Enoch. So let's just look at all that has been said on this theological story of Enoch. When we put together the beginning where we talk about the Tower of Babel and all the languages being changed, and then we look at the New Testament, and in 1 Corinthians, it speaks about speaking in tongues. When I think of speaking in tongues, I think of speaking multiple languages. Things have changed from mankind multiple times since the language has changed since the Tower of Babel. So when we look at all of this, we can understand that the name Enduranki has been changed many times to Hermes, to Hermes Trismegistus, to Thoth, to Enoch, or Hanok, also as well known as a word in Hebrew. So Hanok is known to be Enoch. And now we have a story of who Enoch is and who he was for you to understand. Also, it's just good to get out and read a book or two about Enoch. So for some sources that I want to talk about, I read from the English Standard Version, the ESV Bible, the Ancient Book of Jasher, written by Ken Johnson, the Ancient Book of Jubilees, written by Ken Johnson, and also the Ancient Book of Enoch, written by Ken Johnson. There you can check those out. Another thing I wanted to talk about before I end this is when you look at the Book of Jubilees, it was translated to English in like 1888, and I believe that they found a copy of it in Giaz in Ethiopia in 1840. But also they have found the Book of Jubilees to be with the Dead Sea Scrolls, and it's another testament for Moses. It was written to Moses. So on the account from the angels telling him how the creation of the earth, it talks quite a bit about the Sabbath and the festivals that were involved in that time and generation of the world when through Genesis and the Exodus. So it's kind of another story. They call it the Little Genesis, and that's the nickname I've heard of it. So anyways, I just want to say thanks for listening, and hopefully you got a good understanding, the theological understanding of Enoch and who he was. And this will give you an idea of how to get out there and read more about Enoch. And maybe next time as well that we get on here and talk about Enoch, we're going to get into Islam and the LDS Church and the Kabbalah religions, and talk about this similar story of Enoch and give you an understanding of placement and knowledge that is in place. So God bless, and I hope you enjoyed listening to this story of Enoch.